Style is the answer to everything. Hear me out if you can. I want to share some ideas and coincidences from my latest podcast. First, here's a pretty good definition of style. I think everything in life is art. What you do, how you dress, the way you love someone, and how you talk, your smile and your personality, what you believe in and all your dreams, the way you drink your tea, how you decorate your home or party, your grocery list, the food you make, how your writing looks, and the way you feel. Life is art. That's a quote attributed to Helena Bonham Carter that makes a lot of sense to me. So, several months ago, I was invited to speak at the West Clocks Metaphysical Fair. And when I got that inquiry, I was reading a poem by Charles Bukowski called Style is the Answer to Everything. And I was asked, what will be the title of your talk? And I responded almost reflexively, style is the answer to everything. So let's go with that for the title. And now it's also the title of episode 112 of Kind Mind. But when I arrived to the event that day, there were many remarkable vendors and speakers, but soon a hypnotherapist waved me down and implored me to accept his gift of a handwriting analysis. So I wrote a quick note with a pen and slid it over to him, and he gave an incisive assessment, which, among other things, touched on how I cross my T's with no clear beginning or end. The horizontal line just feathers in and out, and he accurately discerned that it reflects my difficulty making clear decisions, which is true. I am a Libra, after all. Or resistance to binary thinking, or continuously learning but not concluding. Now this is all unfolding as I'm on my way to speak about the classical relationship between handwriting and style. So one salient point from the aforementioned Carter quote about personal style was how your writing looks. Etymologically, the word style comes from Latin stylus, which meant an ancient writing implement consisting of a small rod with a pointed end for engraving on clay tablets. And that's why the digital tablet pens today are also called stylus. Later, when the word evolved into English, it also meant the way you write with the pen. And that may be why we redundantly describe a quintessential maneuver as someone's signature style. Keep in mind, you don't have to try to write like yourself. You have to try to write unlike yourself, because style isn't acquired, it's revealed. So why is style often conceived as synonymous with the word fashion? For instance, you might think of someone who's stylish as someone who must be thoughtfully dressed. My guess is that it's not so much that style has anything to do intrinsically with fashion, but fashion as a cultural force or empowering personal clothing aesthetic, or even the fashion industry itself, generally has greater respect for the primacy of style, in contrast to, say, record labels behind pop music or major Hollywood studios behind blockbuster films. Bukowski's poem includes the lines, "a fresh way to do a dull or dangerous thing," and goes on to say, not many have style, not many can keep style. I have seen dogs with more style than men, although not many dogs have style. Cats have it with abundance. But now we have a paradox. You don't have to try, and it's hard to maintain style. It's sort of like how a bike must be pedaled to stay upright, which ain't hard unless there's a strong headwind, which I'll come back to shortly. So style is signature, yes, but also has to keep moving, has to evolve, lest it devolve into branding, which is antithetical to art for art's sake. But this isn't about art as a job, but art that is a basic right to express ourselves broadly or maximally without infringing on the rights of others, from sexuality to spirituality, and also has to keep evolving because of maturation, or how fluid we really are, all the way down to the carousel of electrons in our atoms. We physically exchange every molecule in our body for a new one over 7 to 10 years. But we could change completely metaphysically in a moment and should be under no obligation to be exactly what we were yesterday. And also, when someone who does work as a professional artist, they're often under enormous economic pressure to copy themselves, but that's still a kind of plagiarism, especially according to legends like Miles Davis, where he sounds like himself throughout his prolific musical journey, but it's always fresh. Early on, he tried to play fast like his horn predecessors, Bird and Gillespie, but soon surrendered to an authentic, slower pace on Birth of the Cool, and then reinvented jazz itself with the most pivotal album of the whole genre, Kind of Blue, which introduced modal jazz, and then late 60s, early 70s, Bitches Brew, and In a Silent Ways, exploration into electronic, funk, techno, and freeforms, but somehow with the almost inner child of his muted horn in all its quiet defiance or gentle fury throughout. Similarly, Picasso once famously denied that an actual painting of his was his, to the chagrin of a would-be reseller in possession of that particular piece, who was hoping to get a certificate of authenticity signed, autograph, signature. But Picasso rejected it not because it was a forgery, but because he felt that it didn't represent his true evolving style. He knew he was only imitating himself at the time. Similar anecdotes persist about Tolstoy, which you can find in his essay, What is Art?, reflecting back on what many considered some of his masterpieces even, and critiquing his own motivations. This deeper world of style, I think, is creatively realized in someone like Frida Kahlo, who transmuted everything into style: painting, writing, letters, conversations, chronic pain, addiction, trauma, oppression, revealing just how pregnant with style each moment is. People who admire her admire the whole life, diaries, political convictions, her every countenance, and the way she related to anything like the emotional wavelengths of color. In her diary, an intimate self-portrait, it reads, "Yellow is madness, sickness, fear, part of the sun, and also happiness." What I'm getting at with this podcast episode is that life is not a noun but a verb, not a thing but a process. I wish for people to be free from mechanization, but it starts with reclaiming the sacred from the profane in everyday activities. Life is transformation. Conformity is illusory, but with real consequences, and often functions as a coping mechanism for insecurity, although it also holds the tension between authenticity and our fundamental need to belong. And its implications play out on personal, social, and structural levels. Transform versus conform. So then I kept repeating these words which end in form, and retrieved memories of the 1992 Peter Pan adaptation film Hook. Captain Hook shouts, "Good form" or "bad form" to Peter's son Jack. He's sympathetically substituting for the workaholic father as a backwards mentor. And then at the end, Hook applauds Peter's good form for letting him go free because it's true to Peter's transformation and ethos and fulfills their dialectic. In some ontological sense, they need each other. One defines the other, like Pancho and Lefty, or Batman and Joker, or Jean Valjean and Javert. It got me thinking about what could be the arc of human style. Is there a map? I had a dream the night before the talk of a circle with these different forms and each form's relationship to every other form. It simply parallels the hero's journey in The Power of Myth of Joseph Campbell, but I'll introduce it here. It begins with uniform, or the standard. This sets the stage with the orthodoxies that determine what is accepted. It represents the status quo from which style sprouts and eventually matures and blossoms, hopefully. As a child, I was shocked by industry everywhere around me, that the baseline was already insane, but how it meant that there were powerful forces that defined normalcy long before me, imposing their will on the earth and the future. And I would have to decide how to live in this storm and resist it even if my positionality has me calmer in one of the eyes or centers. Let me relate it like this. When I saw black and white films or TV shows as a child on Nick at Night or Turner Movie Classics, I was convinced that the world used to be black and white until color was invented. I think because my parents educated me that Technicolor was a scientific advancement since their childhood. So I was curious to know if some places were still black and white. And then I found such a place in South Chicago, not far from Calumet City, where we lived with my grandma. There were and are industrialized and marginalized and concretized neighborhoods of Chicago, no nature to be found. I told my mom how sad I was that those spaces were neglected and people had to still live in black and white. She understood what I didn't fully know I meant. Later, doing urban social work research and investigating racial health disparities in school, I came across a footnote about how Cabrini Green, a monument of racism, and other low-income housing projects were ripe opportunities to study the effect of lack of colorful and vibrant green space on the human condition, because environmental injustice was a new iteration of inequality since the Industrial Revolution. Anyways, you get the point of uniform. We wear one and try to survive one. Then there's conform, or the expectation. We adopt styles that are accepted and expected. We constantly are taught what it means to be human even and how to behave. Peer pressure to censorship, external and internal. In Discipline and Punish, Michel Foucault wrote about the concept of the panopticon before the internet and cell phones, suggesting that people would police themselves stylistically because of an all-seeing eye of technology. Today, we know our devices, from phones to TVs, are watching, they're recording and collecting our data, but this undoubtedly has a reciprocal conditioning. We're training the algorithm, but it's also training us. So the censorship isn't always there in a direct or overt way. Henry Miller said the language of society is conformity. The language of the creative individual is freedom. Then comes perform, or the show. It's the facade or mask we may not even know we wear. Persona means mask. It involves a conscious or unconscious but deliberate presentation of oneself in a manner congruent with societal expectations, whatever that manner be, from personality and sexuality to one's career to every definition of a self, followed hopefully by deform, or the break. Not necessarily a destructive phase, but deconstructive. This marks the beginning of the rebellion. It happens individually and collectively. It's about questioning, experimenting, unlearning, and breaking away from the uniform to explore new possibilities, which leads to free form, or the authenticity. This represents the uninhibited expression, where style is guided by intuition or flow state or spontaneity. And then reform, or the prototype. In this vanguard energy, innovations and deviations coalesce into a new set of norms. This emerging style gains popularity, if not with others, at least within oneself, setting the stage for a new uniform and cycle. Uniform could be understood as the first or seventh in this model, as transform, depending on how one examines the cycle. Clockwise or counterclockwise, looking forward to the revolution or the transform, or backward at the uniform. Speaking of repeating the cycle, Hannah Arendt wrote an acknowledgement of the phenomena that even the most radical revolutionary becomes conservative the day after the revolution. Style is the answer to everything. That's quite a bold claim, but I hope this little style cycle sheds light on why that's possible and how style aspires to solve the most urgent problems of our time: war, corruption, existentialism. Look at Julian Assange, for example. Regardless of whether you think he crossed the line or not, Does he have more style than mainstream media reporters? He makes a critical point on this when he said, nearly every war that was started in the past 50 years has been the result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they hadn't reprinted government propaganda. Populations don't like wars. Populations have to be fooled into war. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we will also have a peaceful environment, end quote. Because we can now see that the absence of style is not a lack of fashion sense, but when it comes to politics or power, the lack of style or the inability to keep it is bad form, and much more a testament to cowardice or gutlessness or spinelessness in the language of conformity. Those words would never describe true style, whether it's a daredevil leap by Evel Knievel or Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, which incited a riot at its Paris premiere as the audience defended themselves against the assault on their ears, or the sacrifices of countless activists from every sphere of society and every liberation struggle. Well, if you're still listening and haven't fallen asleep yet, then it's probably safe for you to listen to the whole episode of Kind Mind. But still be cautious if you're listening while operating a vehicle. Thanks.